hands together.
It is Sabbath morning in the Alpha Agape Seventh-day Adventist Church. 2 years ago, this congregation didn't exist. It sprang up after a tent meeting in downtown Miami. Churches like Alpha Agape are flourishing because of a vigorous emphasis on evangelism in black communities. But there was a time when evangelizing black people seemed unlikely. This is how the church looked in the mid-1800s. White. It took the voice of a strong spiritual leader to change that.
Ellen White wrote the book, the pamphlet, Our Duty to the Colored People. She had a deep yearning to see work done among the colored people in the South at the time. In fact, she made repeated appeals to the General Conference over the years, but they would always take an action and do nothing. She never, in her wildest dream, though, expected her own son, Edson, the son who didn't take care of money, the son who most people had written off, the son who himself wanted to leave the denomination. She never expected him, James Edson White, to be the one to fulfill the mission that she knew must be done for blacks in the South.
Edson White's mission began with the Ultimate Home Handyman Project. He and his friend, Will Palmer, built a 72-foot paddle-wheeled steamer in their garage.
Some of the reasons that the boat became a good way to work was because he was able to be much more mobile that way. He could work in Vicksburg, he was able to go to Yazoo City, he was able to carry everything he needed, printing presses, a kitchen, chapel, everything he needed right there on the boat.
He steamed up and down the waterways, establishing the work in many communities.
Then he had what he referred to as the holy schools, or the mission schools. These are these little chapel churches that also served as schools. And he would take the Morning Star to a certain location. He and his wife would go to the school, and there they would teach and share and so forth, and they would train the people to train others, and then they would leave.
So as Edson taught the freed slaves to read, he also printed a paper to evangelize them.
It was called the Gospel Herald, and the point simply was that the gospel would be heralded throughout the South via the Morning Star in this publication.
Edson White started what would become Message magazine, a powerful evangelism tool. Message coincided with a growth of black pride. The news began to include great musicians like Marian Anderson and Duke Ellington, and there were sports figures like Jesse Owens and the boxer Joe Louis.
It was following this period that they saw the need of having a resurgence of self-determination, self-empowerment, and to reinvigorate the black work. It has always been this, that whenever you have this resurgence, you have to have the communication journal. And Message magazine was the ideal piece. And so they just reinvented or reintroduced the Gospel Herald, only this time under the name of Message magazine.
Ironically, this magazine aimed at blacks had none on staff. The Southern Publishing Association considered the launch of Message an experiment, so no new editor was hired. R.B. Thurber simply added the editing of Message to his duties as editor of the Watchman magazine. 3 more white editors followed until 1945. They invited a brilliant young pastor named Lewis B. Reynolds to be the new editor.
He was class, he was dignity, he was polish, he was grace, and all of that goes along with it. And just as he was class, he sought to put out a first-class journal.
I know that the response of black people themselves was a very positive one. The circulation went up in an incredible kind of way. In fact, the circulation went beyond that of these times. And something that people wanted, they were delighted with. They wanted to share it with other people.
Selling Message opened the door to a college education to several generations of blacks.
You can make a whole scholarship for school or for whatever you need the money for by just doing Message Magazine.
This is only the most recent generation to work their way through school with Message. Etta Maycock Dudley remembers going to the streets to earn her college scholarship in the 1940s.
And on Fridays, I'd stand at the banks because that was payday and catch everybody coming out, and that was my best day. I would make I thought I was rich, making $20 a day selling magazines at the entrance to the bank.
I'd work around the joints. You know what the joints are? The clubhouses and the places where people, they dine out in the evenings and they're drinking and whatever. And I would go inside the clubs. Yes, I would go inside and go from table to table. And I would say, excuse me, I'd like to introduce to you a Christian magazine. It's called the Message Magazine, and I would like to leave this with you. It's only 25 cents, and you'll certainly enjoy it. And so they would take it right at the beer counter or wherever they were, or the tables, and I got such a big kick out of that. First of all, I was only 16 going on 17. Sometimes they would just put a whole they empty their coin purses into my little can that I had. And I went on. That was my actually first year before going off to Oakwood College, and I made my scholarship.
This has been a life-changing experience for me. Having a life of service and helping people and realizing that you're making an impact on someone's life, be it with drugs or about AIDS, and seeing the effect that it can have on them. I think it really prepares you for a life of service.
Would you have enough Jesus in your life? You can take it to the streets.
Here's another man who was prepared for a life of service by selling Message Magazine. Remember the church in Miami we visited earlier? Well, meet its pastor, John D. Parker I.
I have sold those books as a student literature evangelist for Oakwood College, and I have gone from coast to coast, taking Message Magazine and presenting it to those who don't know Christ, and I've seen many people being led to the foot of the cross as a result of Message Magazine.
While an army of hall porters went to the streets with Message, editors like James E. Dykes and Garland J. Millett shaped the content of the only Christian magazine that spoke directly to the needs and interests of black Americans.
There is a kinship between black evangelists and writers with black audiences and readership.
Message definitely had a black flavor.
Then came the expression. In fact, I remember when it first came out down there in Grenada, Mississippi, black is beautiful, how beautiful it is. See, before that, it was sort of a shameful thing to be dark-skinned. And W.R. Robinson's very dark-skinned. He came forth with the idea of that black concept. We're all in the struggle together. He began to bring black history into Message Magazine.
The Message Magazine really was a success from the very beginning, and the years just made it more successful. With the publication of special issues, especially the one that we did on Black History, September 1974. The first printing was completely sold out. Had to go back to the press again and make another printing, and that one was sold out.
Message editors sought to lift up the race by focusing on their accomplishments. They also sought to lift readers up by introducing them to the truth.
Each of the editors really stressed the doctrines of the church. But Paul Monk, in becoming the editor of Message Magazine in 1980 and worked to 1985, I find Paul to be a rare and marvelous combination of sense and soul. He was politically, socially, and spiritually attuned.
When I came to Message Magazine as editor, I really didn't know what direction I wanted to take it.
Like Delbert Baker before him, Stephen Ruff had sold Message on the street before becoming its editor, and that helped shape his focus.
Is I wanted the magazine to be street worthy. I wanted it so that when people on the street look at it, it would have an appeal or a draw to them. And I knew that if it could make it on the street, it could make it anywhere else that people would go.
Now we come back to the Alpha Agape Church in Miami. This story begins with Melvin Robinson. Melvin has been an Adventist for a long time, but several members of his family did not join the church.
They may not know it, but every morning and every night, every family member of mine, I call their name and ask the Lord to help them to see the light.
And in addition to praying, he did something else.
They've been getting, I guess, the message over 10 or 11 years, just sending them the Message magazine. Because see, when they put the campaign on each year within the church for the Message magazine, I just automatically sign up all the family members. I was interested in seeing my family read themselves into the truth, because for one reason that even reading the Spirit of Prophecy, that Sister White says that, you know, that our literature should fall like the leaves of autumn in any way that I thought it was possible to get them to just to read, you know, because I think sometimes reading does more than you're talking.
When the tent meeting came to town, Melvin invited his brother Henry and his sister Salomia. They came, and so did their families.
I just say he was a good example for his family, and they came on in, and I introduced him to some of the things, you know, by inviting him, and then he invited his family. So it's like what's called a chain reaction.
At the close of the meeting, several family members went down into the water.
If there was any way that someone could grasp the real meaning and understanding of someone who proclaims that they're a member of God's family because of Message magazine, there's nothing in the world that parallels that. And to see what has taken place in the Robinson family, it's but a small and insignificant element of what can happen when the word of God goes out. It seems insignificant, but the word is powerful. And the promise is it would not return void, but it will accomplish the work. We just have to get it out there.